The dynamics of the workplace, the games of power and perceived value, they unfold in remarkably similar ways across the globe, whether you're looking out over Silicon Valley or like me right now. Reflecting here in Manitoba, betrayal in a suit feels the same everywhere. Let me tell you about a time I experienced that unique kind of coldness, the one that settles in your bones when you realize you're being replaced, not fired outright, no. That would be too direct. This was the slow, deliberate erasure. It crystallized the morning I saw him. Younger, eager, sitting at a desk near mine, introduced by my boss, Mr. Davies, with sickeningly forced cheerfulness as our new synergy led my projects suddenly transitioning, my access quietly restricted. Davies spun tales of leveraging my senior expertise for strategic oversight, pure corporate doublespeak for being sidelined. He assumed I'd just drift into irrelevance, grateful for the paycheck. Idea that the complex, vital system propping up his entire division relied on knowledge only I possessed, and I'd just tossed the keys to someone who couldn't even see the locks. To truly grasp the magnitude of Davies' blunder, you have to understand what I actually did at Apex Dynamics for 15 years. I wasn't just some mid-level manager shuffling papers. I was the architect and reluctant caretaker of the company's central nervous system, a sprawling, custom-built client relationship and operations management system known internally as Odin. I'd been there when Odin was first conceived, wrote significant chunks of its core code, back when Apex was just a handful of people in a cramped office. Over the years, as the company grew, Odin grew with it, becoming this complex, slightly temperamental beast, layered with patches, custom modules for demanding legacy clients, and undocumented dependencies that only I fully comprehended because, frankly, no one else dared to dive that deep. Replacing Odin would cost millions and involve massive disruption, so it persisted, humming along largely thanks to my constant vigilance and deep institutional knowledge. When Davies arrived as the new division head 5 years ago, he knew nothing about Odin's guts. He was all slick presentations and buzzword. In those early days, he relied on me constantly. I was the one who explained why his simple requests would break everything, the one who pulled all-nighters fixing obscure bugs that stumped the rest of the team, one who smoothed things over with our biggest, most demanding clients who trusted me personally to handle their integrations with Odin. He'd clap me on the back, call me his rock star, tell executives I was indispensable, and I believed him, continued to pour everything into the role, assuming my loyalty and unique expertise guaranteed my place. But maybe around year 3 of his tenure, things began to subtly shift. I started getting left off key email threads, strategic meetings about Odin's future would happen, and I'd only hear about the decisions secondhand. Davies began soliciting opinions from more junior staff, praising them publicly for fresh perspectives that often ignored critical technical limitations I would have pointed out. My performance reviews became masterpieces of vague negativity. Despite my team consistently hitting targets and Odin maintaining stability, phrases like needs to improve strategic communication or must better align with evolving corporate synergy started appearing. It was the classic playbook for managing someone out. Create a paper trail, however flimsy, to justify a later decision. Why? Maybe he felt threatened by my deep knowledge. Maybe he saw my salary as an easy cut, figuring he could replace me with someone younger and cheaper. Maybe it was simple arrogance, believing anyone could manage Odin with a manual. Reasons: he fundamentally misunderstood that Odin wasn't just software. It was 15 years of patches, workarounds, and tribal knowledge held together by my specific expertise. When he introduced Kevin that Monday, beaming about new talent and Monday, future-proofing the division, he wasn't just replacing an employee. He was pulling a critical Jenga block from the bottom of the tower, completely oblivious to the instability he was creating. Then came the phase I call the erasure. Davies, with a performance of managerial benevolence that deserved some kind of award for insincerity, tasked me with mentoring Kevin. "Show him the ropes," he said, clapping me on the shoulder with feigned camaraderie. Knowledge transfer. Knowledge transfer. It felt more like being forced to hand over the keys to my own house before being locked out, sitting side by side with Kevin, this eager, oblivious kid who represented my obsolescence, explaining the complex architecture of Odin, a system I knew like the back of my hand, was profoundly humiliating. I'd answer his questions, guide him through basic functions, all while Davies would periodically check in, offering vapid encouragement to Kevin and patronizing platitudes to me about my valuable legacy knowledge. My actual work dwindled to meaningless tasks. Key projects were reassigned with flimsy excuses. Client calls I'd handled for years. Kevin was suddenly leading them, often fumbling through answers while I sat silently in the meeting, explicitly told by Davies beforehand to let the new talent take the lead before lead. Colleagues became distant. The sympathetic glances turned into awkward avoidance. You become a ghost in the hallways, a reminder of corporate maneuvering people don't want to acknowledge. It's a feeling many understand, that sense of being cast aside after years of dedicated contribution, a story that sadly plays out in offices from Saigon to Seattle, regardless of the industry. The disrespect chips away at your self-worth, replacing pride with a gnawing anxiety and a simmering rage. There were nights I barely slept, questioning my entire career, my judgment, wondering if I really was stuck. But being pushed to the margins gives you a different perspective. You're no longer caught up in the daily grind. You have time to watch, to listen, to think, while going through the motions of mentoring Kevin on the surface-level aspects of Odin. I paid close attention to the areas where he struggled, the deeper system logic he clearly wasn't grasping. He was competent with modern coding practices, sure, but Odin was an old beast full of quirks and critical dependencies he treated like minor annoyances rather than potential system killers. He started proposing optimizations, eager to make his mark, and Davies, technologically illiterate but eager to showcase his modernizing leadership, greenlit them without truly understanding the risks, and that's when it hit me, not like a thunderclap, but like a slow dawning realization, remembering the deep system architecture I'd implemented years ago after a near disaster, following a major data scare caused by an unexpected server interaction. I had built a hidden, final resort diagnostic and recovery module within Odin's core. It was designed to isolate corrupted data segments and initiate a clean system restore from secure backups, but activating it required a complex, multi-layered authentication sequence, essentially a non-standard master key protocol known only to me, documented offline, and never included in the standard operational manuals Davies or Kevin would have access to. It was my ultimate fail-safe, designed to prevent catastrophic data loss from accidental or incompetent administrative actions. Davies, in his arrogant rush to replace me and empower Kevin, had given his new protégé the administrative tools to potentially trigger a disaster, without ever knowing the one mechanism designed to contain such an event was something only the man he was discarding held the key to. Discovering I still held that master key, that ultimate failsafe for Odin, was like finding a loaded weapon in a room where everyone assumes you're unarmed. It fundamentally shifted my perspective. The despair didn't vanish overnight, but it was overshadowed by a cold, clear sense of purpose. Revenge. Revenge. Maybe partly, but it felt more like ensuring consequences. Davies had treated me as disposable, my 15 years of knowledge irrelevant. He'd shown contempt for the system's stability in his rush to install his cheaper protégé. My plan wasn't about active sabotage. That wasn't my style. And it carried too much risk? No, my strategy was far more passive, and therefore far more insidious. I would simply let Davies' own arrogance and Kevin's predictable incompetence run their natural course. Outwardly, I became the picture of defeated compliance. I meticulously performed the dwindling, menial tasks Davies assigned me. I continued the mentoring sessions with Kevin, offering patient, surface-level explanations, answered his questions honestly, but never volunteered the deeper, critical information about Odin's true vulnerabilities, or the existence of the fail-safe recovery module. He never asked, and I certainly wasn't going to offer. Navigating these kinds of workplace politics requires a certain kind of patience, a skill you learn whether you're dealing with corporate structures in Hanoi or Houston. You learn when to speak, and crucially, when to remain silent. I even made a show of actively job searching, leaving recruitment websites open on my screen, letting the office gossip mill churn about my imminent departure. Let Davies think I was focused on escape, not on defense. Meanwhile, I watched and I documented every change Kevin proposed, every ill-advised optimization he implemented with Davies' enthusiastic approval. I kept a meticulous log, time-stamped, with brief notes on the potential risks based on my deep knowledge, documented Davies' directives, Kevin's actions, and my own carefully worded emails offering basic assistance, but highlighting that Kevin was now the primary technical lead for Odin as per Davies' instructions. It was my insurance policy. It was my insurance policy. Crashed due to their meddling. I needed proof that the failure wasn't mine, but a direct result of their actions after I was effectively sidelined. It was like watching someone gleefully rewire a house without understanding the fuse box. Kevin, eager to impress, kept fiddling, kept improving, unaware that he was steadily overloading circuits, bypassing safety checks I'd built in, and pushing Odin closer and closer to the edge. Davies, blinded by his agenda, saw only progress. Tension was palpable, at least for me. Every day felt like waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the system alarms that only I knew how to interpret correctly to finally scream red alert. The trap wasn't something I built. It was something Davies and Kevin were building themselves, day by day. I just had to wait patiently for them to step into it. The inevitable finally happened on a Tuesday morning, right during the peak processing load for Odin's core functions. It wasn't a gradual slowdown. It was a catastrophic failure. Critical modules went offline, client data streams became corrupted, and the entire division effectively ground to a halt. Reports flooded in. Clients started calling furiously. Inexperienced Hart was completely swamped, apparently making frantic, ill-advised attempts to reboot systems, likely compounding the data corruption. Davies, I heard from former colleagues later, was a whirlwind of impotent rage, screaming ATA. Kevin, demanding immediate fixes that were simply impossible without understanding the system's deep architecture. The financial losses were mounting by the minute. Then my personal phone rang. Caller ID, Mr. Davies. His voice, usually so smooth and commanding, was strained, tight with panic. "We have a situation," he started, trying to maintain a shred of authority. "Odin is down. Kevin seems unable to resolve it. I need you to come in now." There was no apology, no acknowledgement of how I'd been treated, just pure desperation. masked as a command. That was the moment. Calmly, I informed him that, as he knew, I was no longer an employee of Apex Dynamics and had no responsibility for Odin, pursuing other opportunities. When he started sputtering about loyalty and duty, I reminded him that my loyalty hadn't been valued. Then, when the begging started, "Name your price," I did. I quoted a consulting fee that was intentionally astronomical, with a non-negotiable upfront payment, a minimum 4-week engagement, and absolute authority over the recovery process, reporting directly to the CEO, not him. Stunned silence, then sputtering protests. But he knew he was trapped. He'd fired the only person who could fix his mess. In the end, the board initiated an external investigation. My documentation, combined with forensic analysis of the system logs, clearly showed the ill-advised changes made by Kevin under Davies' explicit approval, and the lack of proper oversight. Davies was forced out, his career at Apex ending in disgrace. Kevin was let go soon after. Did I go back as a consultant? No. I let them stew in the mess they created long enough for the investigation to pinpoint the blame squarely on Davies. My price was designed to be refused, simply to underscore his powerlessness. The story, however, got out. My reputation as the indispensable expert Davies foolishly discarded actually boosted my profile. While the specific tech and corporate structure might seem particular to this story, the core lesson resonates universally. True value isn't dictated by a job, title, or a dismissive boss. It's about competence, integrity, and ultimately, self-respect. This understanding is crucial in any workplace culture, anywhere in the world. Being replaced turned out to be the catalyst I needed to step into my own power, leading to far better opportunities where my skills and experience were genuinely valued. Sometimes, the last laugh isn't loud. It's the quiet satisfaction of knowing your worth. Have you ever had a moment where your true value was finally recognized after being overlooked? Share your story in the comments. If you found this tale of workplace dynamics and quiet vindication satisfying, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell for more stories where the tables get turned.